I discovered my wife's extramarital affair on the day she was admitted to the hospital. Years later, she still struggles to accept my engagement to my fiancé. If there were a prize for the most distressing way to learn of one's significant other's infidelity, I would be a strong contender, and I would likely be inducted into a hall of fame of sorts, along with many other individuals in this subcategory. I suddenly found myself in a club that I would have gladly avoided at all costs. The sound of my ex-wife's voice will forever be etched in my memory. My sister-in-law's voice, repeating the phrase, I'm sorry," over and over again on the telephone while I drove home from a week-long business trip, was a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. I was on a lengthy business trip when I received a call from my sister-in-law. She was distressed and confused, and I had no idea what she was talking about. After I managed to calm her down somewhat, she informed me that my wife was in the hospital and that I needed to hurry home. My mind raced as I tried to get more information and not crash while I began speeding to get there faster. The only thing she told me was that it was an assault. She then cut the call and wouldn't answer when I tried to call her again. A bit of background: my ex-wife and I met in the 1920s, the relationship commenced through a mutual acquaintance at a social gathering. Initially, she appeared to be an ideal partner, exhibiting both physical beauty and a reserved demeanor. It took some time for us to engage in a romantic relationship, but once we did, I was overjoyed. However, when we first attempted to engage in sexual intimacy, she suddenly began crying. This unexpected reaction led me to believe that there might be something wrong with her. I became distressed and assumed that I was somehow responsible for her distress. However, she apologized the following day and informed me that she had been triggered by a traumatic experience that had occurred 2 years prior to our meeting. The relationship was characterized by a pattern of emotional, physical, and mental abuse. During moments of intimacy, the abuser would degrade the victim. Afterward, the abuser would apologize. The victim experienced a flashback, but she reassured me that it had nothing to do with me. We proceeded with caution, as the victim was still in therapy. The situation was challenging, but the victim and I believed that once we overcame this obstacle, our relationship would improve. The relationship appeared to be strengthening. However, a year later, we had not yet engaged. During this period, we had our first sexual encounter. I was fortunate to be able to purchase a house for us, which was made possible by an inheritance from my late uncle. Things were going well, and I had suggested we plant a peach tree, which would symbolize new beginnings. She was enthusiastic about the idea. We were engaged not long after that, and the experience was genuinely remarkable. Of course, we experienced the typical challenges and difficulties that are inherent to any marriage. However, I considered myself fortunate because she consistently made an effort to maintain a positive and amicable relationship with me. She would often gently point out if I did anything to upset her, and I was grateful for her understanding and support. I was subsequently promoted at my place of employment, which resulted in an increase in remuneration. However, it also entailed a greater frequency of travel for work-related conferences and business meetings. I observed that my partner had been displaying a noticeable decline in mood and a reduction in the level of intimacy in our relationship. She would frequently keep her mobile phone close to her and even cease to address matters that caused her distress. I attempted to initiate a discussion with her about this, but she assured me that she was coping well and that this was not a cause for concern. She informed me that this was a phase she was going through and that there was no reason for me to doubt her or to let it go. She would sometimes go to her sister's place and spend the night, telling me that she just needed a bit of girl time with her sister. The day I received that telephone call was the day she was meant to be keeping her sister company again. I remember rushing into the hospital, barely breathing, and frantically asking. The police officer, who was known to be the most understanding and patient of his colleagues, sat me down to explain what had transpired. He informed me that he was a friend of my wife's and that he had responded to a domestic disturbance call. Upon arriving at the scene, he discovered a couple engaged in a physical altercation. The man, who was my wife's partner, was on top of the woman, punching her, while she was screaming and attempting to scratch him. This information did not make sense to me. The officer informed me that the incident had nothing to do with my wife, as we were married. Furthermore, he stated that anyone who knew my wife would have known that she would never engage in such behavior. He then placed his hand on my shoulder and advised me to remain calm, as the woman in question was, in fact, my wife. If the situation had not been so serious, I would have found his assertion amusing. However, there was something about the way he said it that made me believe him. He asserted that his account was credible, and I was subsequently escorted by a nurse to see my wife. The scene that greeted me remains vivid to this day. I was initially unable to find the words to describe it. I simply stood there for what seemed like an eternity. Then, a doctor entered the room and informed me of my wife's injuries. The jaw was slightly fractured, her left eye was completely swollen shut, and she had massive bruising covering half of her face. Her face was also severely injured, with 3 broken ribs. The doctor then informed me that my wife was pregnant. I was still unable to comprehend how this could have occurred. I then observed her sister, who initially attempted to avoid me. However, upon the encouragement of her police officer friend, she disclosed the details of her knowledge. It transpired that my wife's SE had contacted her 5 months prior. He had been engaging in this behavior. The concept of the redemption pyramid, in which an individual would apologize to those they had wronged in order to purge their karma, was a common belief among the people I met. Many of them were experiencing severe emotional distress, and some were even going so far as to accuse me of being a BS, big scammer, meter. At the time, I was unaware of the extent of my wife's involvement with this individual. However, it soon became apparent that she had developed strong feelings for him, despite the fact that he had previously wronged her. These feelings were further complicated by the fact that he appeared to have undergone a transformation. My wife's emotional involvement with this individual eventually led to an emotional affair. She sought counsel from her sister, who advised her to proceed at a gradual pace and to address her emotions if necessary. This led to a physical affair 3 months later. She informed my wife that she should at least attempt to reconcile with her former partner in whatever manner she deemed appropriate, and even offered to cover for my wife on occasion. My S was visibly distressed at this point and continued to express remorse to me. She stated that she was unaware of the abuse, as my wife had not informed anyone other than me and her therapist at the time. I was in a state of numbness, unable to feel anything and experiencing a profound sense of bewilderment at my wife's actions. When my wife eventually came to her senses, I was present and she burst into tears upon seeing me. I spent the following months in a state of emotional numbness, unable to process the situation. Individual counseling was provided for her. In addition, my wife underwent marriage counseling at the urging of her family. During this process, she revealed that she had been unfaithful to me. She stated that she had fantasized about driving into the river because she smelled like her lover and did not want to corrupt me. This made sense to her. She said that she had attempted to end the relationship, but was too weak to do so. It was only after she discovered that she was pregnant that she was able to recognize the toxicity of further contact with this man, both for herself and the unborn child. Consequently, she went to end things in person for good when he became violent towards her. As a result of this incident, she became a shell of herself and developed a phobia of any other males. She was also uninterested in other males, but not me. At one point, she was unable to use the bathroom at night unless I was holding her hand. After the birth of the child, we obtained a paternity test, which confirmed that I was the father. However, the longer I spent with her, the more I realized that I did not hate my wife. Instead, I developed an intense dislike for her. I was unable to see the woman I had married. Instead, I saw only her remaining physical attributes. I elected to depart from the marriage because I was concerned that I might engage in behavior that I would later regret and become akin to her abusive former partner. My wife implored me not to leave and even extended the absurd proposal of providing me with a hall pass, as well as striking me if I desired to do so. At this juncture, I was compelled to extricate myself from the marriage. My wife was actually quite magnanimous during the dissolution of the marriage. She relocated to her parents' residence and entered into a highly meticulous cohabitation agreement. The parenting plan is used by the courts in future proceedings. 3 years later, I met my current fiancée by chance. I was in a bookstore with a friend when a woman approached me to correct my pronunciations of Egyptian gods and cities. I was impressed by her knowledge and her Egyptian heritage. We exchanged numbers, and we began dating. I proposed to her in front of the tree I had planted years earlier. I proposed marriage by asking her to marry me. She declined, stating that she had been planning to propose to me herself because she was in love with me and did not want to lose me or our son, who is still young and innocent. My son informed his mother of what had happened because he was present when it occurred. My former romantic partner arrived that night in the rain, upset and yelling that I could not propose to her fiancé in front of our tree and that our relationship was not over. I am completely exhausted at this. The issue I am unable to resolve is that she is the mother of my child. She is, however, persistently harassing me and my fiancé. How might I persuade her to move on and overcome her fear of men without resorting to a restraining order? I apologize for the length of this post, but I am genuinely in need of advice. I have a question for the perceptive women of Reddit. I am still troubled by the fact that she made time for her ex-partner, who took pleasure in destroying her, only for her to suffer a much worse fate. Is it typical for individuals who have been abused to seek attention from their abusers? If she might hate him, my ex once said. Edit, to be added to the original post. When my fiancé presented me with the ring, which she was going to use to propose to me, she had an engraving on the inner band. It states, "My Pharaoh, damn I love this woman." Update, my wife's now ex-affair was discovered the day she was admitted into the hospital. It has been years. Subsequently, she expressed her inability to accept my engagement to my fiancé. I had not anticipated such a response. I am grateful to all of you for your support and kind words, both for me, my fiancé, and my ex. It is unfortunate that my situation with my ex and her abusive past is not as uncommon as I had presumed, based on some of the similar cases that I have read. These cases have made me question whether I can ever fully recover from this experience. However, I am encouraged to see that some people have been able to overcome similar challenges. I have since recovered from these experiences. I would like to express my gratitude to user Mama20245 for their invaluable advice, which has been instrumental in resolving many of the issues that arose since my initial post. Regarding the events that have transpired since my last update, my son's birthday was approaching. He informed us that he wished to have a camp night for the occasion. It is important to note that the boy has a profound affinity for the outdoors, particularly camping, hiking, and rivers. Due to the ongoing situation, we were unable to utilize our usual camping spots. I offered my backyard as an alternative, which he accepted. He also requested that my ex sleep over, as he wished to emulate a scene from one of his favorite kid adventure shows, where both parents are present. The outdoors is his favorite environment, encompassing activities such as camping, hiking, and even playing in rivers. However, due to the ongoing situation, we cannot go to our usual spots. I offered my backyard as an alternative. Another request he had was for my ex to sleep over as well. He wanted to imitate a scene from one of his kid adventure shows where both parents are sitting on either side of the child. The child and all three are currently engaged in the act of roasting marshmallows on the campfire. I had no intention of denying my son's birthday wishes, but at the same time, I could not allow my ex to sleep in the same tent as me and my son. This would be an act of disrespectful intimacy that would be perceived as a violation of my fiancé's boundaries, even though she said she understood. It was clear that she was not comfortable with the situation. My ex seemed to take advantage of this and kept saying how much she was looking forward to spending the night with her two men. She even went as far as to purchase a significant amount of camping equipment that would put Bear Grylls to shame. She was attempting to assert her dominance over my fiancé and was not being particularly graceful about it. I had to tell her to stop a couple of times, but she only seemed to intensify her efforts. My ex-wife attempted to capitalize on the situation and repeatedly expressed her anticipation of spending the night with her two partners. She even purchased a substantial amount of camping equipment, which would have been more suitable for Bear Grylls than for her. Her actions were intended to be a form of retribution against my fiancé, and she did not exhibit any signs of remorse. I had to interject on several occasions to dissuade her, but I eventually relented when I threatened to invite her sister, whom I had not seen since our divorce. My ex-wife has harbored a burning hatred for her sister ever since. She acknowledges her role in the destruction of our marriage but blames her sister for encouraging the affair and safeguarding her from making choices that would ruin her. However, more importantly, according to her, our life together has become the situation is particularly problematic given that my ex-wife has been unwilling to allow her sister to spend any significant amount of time with our son. This has, at one point, caused my ex-wife to experience severe depression. My ex-wife has been attempting to reconcile with her sister for years, but the situation appears to be worsening over time. A Redditor, Mama20245, offered me a simple and effective solution. I should go out and purchase I purchased a room tent, which enabled my fiancée to participate in the festivities. I promptly procured the item, but my ex was not pleased. However, she was content to reside under the same roof as me during the birthday celebration. My son was elated. He ran around the yard and pretended he was a great explorer, discovering a new land. When evening came, I made the fire and my ex provided the marshmallows. He excitedly sat between us and started roasting his marshmallow alongside us. After the photographic session and the preparation of s'mores, the photographer handed my fiancée a stick and a marshmallow, and sat next to her to make his second s'more. It is difficult to comprehend how something so pure and perfect could emerge from the chaotic relationship between me and my former partner. My former partner requested some time alone, which I granted. We proceeded to the kitchen, where she apologized for her behavior on the day of my proposal, but not for her subsequent actions. She still views me as her husband in her mind, which is why the idea of me giving my heart to another person terrifies her. She stated that she never wanted to cause me pain and would do anything to go back in time and undo her mistakes. She also mentioned how happy she was when the paternity test showed that I was the father because she thought it was a new beginning for us and that he was proof of our love. I thanked her for the courage to share all this, but told her that I was happy with where I was in life and with whom. I was present during the proceedings, but I hoped that she would find someone to make her happy as well. She stated that she meant what she said on the day of the divorce, and that she would wait for me. I left the kitchen feeling exhausted because none of what I was trying to say was effective in reaching her. We decided to conclude the proceedings for the night. My fiancé and I slept in one room of the tent, while my former partner and my son slept in another. Overall, it was a positive birthday for my son, but not so positive for me. This is the current status of the proceedings, and I will provide an update if any significant developments occur.